Welcome to episode 33 of the Security Matters podcast, where we bring you the latest news, views, and opinion from across the UK's dedicated security business sector. My name's Brian Sims, and I'm the editor of Security Matters magazine. We're delighted that this podcast is sponsored by the Security event, which runs at the NEC in Birmingham from the 8th to the 10th of April 2025. Security Matters is once again serving as the lead media partner for the exhibition. To register for the show, visit www.thesecurityevent.co.uk. In terms of the major industry news at the moment, Security Minister Dan Jarvis is urging security professionals offering their specialist services to remain vigilant and question who their clients are in order to ensure the latter are not being tasked by foreign powers to carry out potentially damaging activity against the UK. Jarvis's warning comes as new guidance is published by the Home Office to support professionals within the security business sector when they're approached for work so that they can check they're not assisting state actors looking to undertake malign activity which could harm or threaten the safety or interests of the UK and which may result in them committing a criminal offence themselves. The guidance, which includes resources, scenarios and questions to consider, is designed to help security practitioners understand the law and afford them the tools and confidence needed to carry out necessary due diligence checks in order to ascertain if their client is a foreign state or a body linked to a state seeking to carry out damaging activity against the UK. Without this guidance, individuals risk committing an offence under the National Security Act 2023. Work that security professionals could take on to assist a foreign power in carrying out activities against the UK may include activity intended to sow discord, manipulate public discourse, discredit the political system, bias the progression of policy, or otherwise undermine the safety or interests of the UK. Through the publication of this guidance, the government is also sending a very clear warning to those individuals who deliberately take on work for malicious state actors that they're breaking the law and will be prosecuted for doing so. Dan Jarvis commented, "Security professionals should exercise caution to protect the UK and themselves by fully checking and understanding for whom it is they're working. If they don't, they seriously risk breaking the law and aiding states who seek nothing more than to harm this country and who have no concern for the individuals they employ." The National Security Act 2023 criminalised certain activities that could assist a foreign power to harm the UK's safety or interests. Activities that could fall within these offences include working in the UK for a covert foreign intelligence service, including through second parties that are contracted by these organisations, accepting or agreeing to accept money or other benefits that originally come from a foreign intelligence service, sabotage, carrying out foreign interference activity for or on behalf of or otherwise intended to benefit a foreign power, such as sowing discord, undermining public safety or threatening foreign dissidents and retaining or sharing protected information or trade secrets on behalf of a foreign power. Personnel operating in the security industry, including those who work in the private investigations or close protection spaces or who advise on corporate security and risk, are particularly attractive targets for foreign powers to act as their proxies due to their specialist skill sets and their line of work, often giving them access to valuable information or close proximity to individuals of particular interest. As part of their checks, the Home Office guidance suggests that individuals should ask themselves questions to establish where their client is based, if they fail to provide sufficient information about their identity when specifically requested to do so, and if the tasks being assigned fall under a range of behaviours within scope of the National Security Act 2023, such as those which assist a foreign power, damage the UK, or otherwise undermine public safety. Also in the news, BT is calling on the UK's critical national infrastructure providers, including specialists in sectors such as healthcare, utilities, the emergency services, local and central governments, and the security and fire safety domains, to move away from the outdated analogue copper landline network by the end of December this year. As the country's historic public switch telephone network reaches the end of its life, it's becoming increasingly prone to faults and difficult to maintain. Ofcom's recent Connected Nations report highlights that in 2024, the number of significant PSTN resilience incidents reported increased sharply by circa 45%. The transition away from the PSTN is impacting a wide range of critical public systems. This could include water monitoring sensors, phone lines for doctors and pharmacies, intruder and fire alarms, lift alarms, emergency phone lines by roads, help points at train stations, and some older card payment machines. Moving the UK from analogue to digital connectivity is a once-in-a-generation industry-wide programme orchestrated to help future-proof communications for everyone. Recognised as a necessary step by Ofcom and the government, it's an investment in more stable, secure and efficient connectivity. While BT moved customers off almost 300,000 legacy business lines in 2024, its data shows many CNI providers are still relying on outdated analogue connectivity for mission-critical services. BT is urging these organisations to act now and work with its team of specialists to review the technology estates and identify any impacted devices, test whether these devices are compatible with alternative connectivity, and make the switch to more reliable digital networks in 2025. This will then assist customers to mitigate the growing risks of communication disruptions and future-proof their operations. New BT data highlights the progress still to be made across CNI sectors in order to harness the benefits of digital connectivity. As of December last year, 60% of BT CNI customers have yet to put a strategy in place for transitioning to digital networks. However, significant progress is being made in key sectors. 80% of BT customers in the energy industry and 64% in the water industry, for example, have a plan in place or are otherwise advanced in their migration journeys, duly demonstrating strong momentum towards a more reliable and future-ready digital infrastructure. The UK's PSTN infrastructure is set to be retired by the end of January 2027. To support organisations with CNI services that currently rely on the legacy network, the government recently announced the PSTN Critical National Infrastructure Charter, which outlines the safeguards that communication providers and network operators alike will put in place during this change to the UK's connectivity infrastructure. BT is one of the signatories to the PSTN Charter, hailing it as a major milestone to mark the urgency of moving away from outdated infrastructure, with no businesses being left behind. Baz Berger, CEO for Business at BT, said, "With the ageing copper landline network becoming increasingly fragile, it's simply too risky to run the UK's essential public services on outdated networks. BT is fully committed to moving these services onto future-proof modern connectivity well ahead of the closure of the analogue copper network, but we cannot do so alone. We're urging all critical national infrastructure providers to act now and help protect their services while reaping the long-term benefits of going digital. Waiting until the analogue switch off is too late. We're working with customers to review their technology estates, test their critical devices, and switch to more reliable connectivity by the end of this year." Our first guest on episode 33 of the Security Matters podcast is David Scott, the Managing Director at Skills for Security, the dedicated national training provider he joined back in the summer of 2019. Prior to his tenure at Skills for Security, David held the position of Curriculum and Quality Manager for the Built Environment and Security Systems at New College, Lanarkshire, where he worked for over 8 years. In parallel, he served as a qualifications verifier for security studies with the Scottish Qualifications Authority. Back in 2018, David gained a first-class honours degree in Leadership and Management at Northumbria University. Today, David's role is all about directing and controlling Skills for Security's operations, while in tandem giving strategic guidance and direction to the board to ensure that the company achieves its key mission and objectives. First appearing as our guest on episode 8, this time around David concentrates on bridging the skills gap and shaping security apprenticeships to meet technology and industry-induced change. Welcome back to the Security Matters podcast, David. In your view, what more can be done to address the critical skills shortages being experienced within both the security and fire safety industries?
From me personally, I see loads of great initiatives going on across the sector just now and have done for a number of years. But the thing with good initiatives are that they're often done on an individual basis and don't have the same impact if it was done from like a centralised attempt. And what I've noticed as well is that that centralised approach to solving some of the key challenges out there in the sector is absolutely vital for success. When we've done research, speaking to employers, speaking to young people coming into the industry, we've gathered all that evidence and essentially realised that the industry for a number of years now, but now more than ever, is sort of suffering from 3 key challenges. They are the skills crisis, a lack of career pathway when people work in this sector, and then of course people don't choose to ever work in this sector. Those 3 things have basically created a perfect storm, and ultimately, unless we have this approach of coming together with positive initiatives, that the problems are only going to get worse. And the government have reported in this sector that the skills crisis is going to continue to get worse over the next 3 to 5 years. And we believe that Skills for Security, because we have such good links with employers, i.e. jobs and careers in the sector, schools and colleges and the unemployed that want jobs in any sector, and of course products manufacturers and technology, that we actually have a really good opportunity of overcoming those challenges that I identified earlier. So Skills for Security in 2023 came up with their own initiative, which is essentially called the Sponsorship Initiative, where we raise investment from partners throughout the UK to essentially tackle those three problems: skills crisis, career pathway, lack of new people joining the sector. And what we've seen since we initiated that is that we ultimately have grown our apprenticeship numbers by more than double in that short period of time. However, what we've also noticed is that now, because we're reinvesting that money from the sector back into charitable activities, that we are engaging more with young people that are looking for careers, perhaps in trades, in electrical, plumbing, heating and ventilation. But instead of choosing that as a career pathway, they are actually choosing the fire and security sector. And we have a pipeline of 1,300 young people that are now engaged with our talent acquisition team to basically choose careers within our sector. And it's the first time that's ever been the case. When I first took over at Skills for Security 5 years ago, the biggest challenges we had were accessibility to training, not enough young people applying for jobs. It was taking circa 6 months to fill an apprenticeship vacancy for our employers. Well, because we are now engaging with young people, we've managed to shorten that time frame down to 6 weeks. So employers are now getting the resource they need in terms of bringing on more and more apprentices. What that's allowed us to do, that sponsorship initiative, is a few things. We're obviously engaging with young people to join the fire and security sector, but we've reinvested the money back into an industry sort of led learner management system, and that's called Skills on Demand. And the Skills on Demand platform is an online, on-demand learning platform with a sort of Netflix type feel around it, where an engineer, a project manager, an operations manager essentially logs on, and it'll say courses recommended for you, courses you started but didn't finish, courses on fire, courses on security, courses on standards. And ultimately, for the first time ever, we have a sort of industry approved platform for all training requirements. It doesn't matter if it's commercial training, CPD training. We also have manufacturer specific in there. We have standards and codes of practice. And for the first time ever, engineers can come to one platform for all their training requirements. And we're now within that platform creating a career pathway. So those that work purely on security can now upskill themselves on fire, on signalling, on digital, on whatever it might be within the sector in order to improve their career prospects within our sector. And that's really, really exciting from my perspective, and a huge benefit to the sector as a whole.
And why do you feel that apprenticeships are such an effective solution when it comes to bridging the skills gap, and notably so given the challenges presented by evolving technologies?
I think that's quite a simple answer in terms of that the research has been done in our sector, and it is absolutely proven that the age demographic of our engineers is unfortunately older, and actually over the next 3 to 5 years, it is very likely that more people are going to be leaving the sector due to retirement or moving career, rather than young people coming in. But I do think that you raised a good point around the technology advancements. The advantage we do have as a sector is actually a very attractive sector to work in. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, that what the sponsorship initiative allows us to do is take our sponsors or partners' brands and showcase it to a whole new audience of young people. So essentially, one of the key features of the sponsorship initiative is essentially we are key partners in the National Apprenticeship Show, and we're going to be running the first ever Fire and Security Career Fair in March. And that ultimately allows us to take our key partners' technology, digital products, and physical products to those shows and basically say to young people for the first time ever, don't become an electrician, don't become a plumber, don't become a heating and ventilation engineer. Actually, come and join this highly tech-driven digital environment where you very rarely use tools these days. You carry a laptop and a tablet and a mobile phone, and it's all cloud-based technical systems that you're going to be working on. And that messaging alone is where we're seeing huge advantage to young people. And yeah, we're certainly hoping that we can drive more and more footfall and talent into the sector to overcome that upcoming sort of skills crisis is coming our way. But ultimately, what I do think as well is that we're already making huge steps forward. 2019, there was only a few hundred apprentices in the fire and security sector in the UK. You look at the amount of apprentices that are on programme now, you're looking at 2,300, 2,500 in the fire and security sector across the whole of the UK. And yeah, the trend on recruitment of apprentices is growing day on day. And we are seeing that as a business. We've grown 1,000% since 2019. We had less than 100 apprentices on our programme back then, and we now have over 1,000 live. So the industry's certainly changing, and I certainly think it's changing quite quickly. But I think the biggest challenge we are seeing is that employers still don't know that apprenticeships are an option. They still think that the only apprenticeship out there that's suitable for fire and security engineers is very much electrical installation. But obviously that would be the wrong type of apprenticeship for a young person in this sector to move on to. And we are certainly trying to push that messaging and make sure more and more employers are aware that the most appropriate and the highest quality apprenticeship programme that can be selected would be the fire and security level 3 apprenticeship that we offer.
With National Apprenticeship Week 2025 on the horizon in mid-February, what steps can the security industry take, in your view, to overcome its perceived image problem and present the discipline for what it is, an exciting and rewarding career choice for apprentices?
It's a really good point, and we always love Apprenticeship Week. It's what we do as a business, obviously. And I think although employers should definitely take part, training providers certainly play a key role in promoting National Apprenticeship Week, because we have that direct access to young people. And I think the first thing is collaboration. Employers should, if they want to promote National Apprenticeship Week, they shouldn't do it on their own. They should definitely select their local college, their local training provider, to create case studies and highlight success stories, so that it increases the opportunity of it being seen by the correct people, i.e. the young people that are joining, and definitely leveraging the right media platform. So obviously LinkedIn is a good platform for business to business. However, it's probably not the appropriate platform for reaching the young people. So you might want to use TikTok or X these days to sort of reach out and showcase to those different audiences. And I think most importantly around that subject is not only showing career progression, i.e. you start as an apprentice, you progress on to install engineer, you become a commissioning engineer, you can earn X amount up to X amount, but also promoting diversity. We do some great work in our sort of space around education and promoting diversity, but the industry as a whole is typically very low percentage of other ethnic minorities that actually work in the sector. And I think this is an opportunity, whilst all types of people are applying for apprenticeships, to essentially for employers to sort of attract new people to apply for jobs and become an apprentice in the sector. And I guess finally, one of the key things would be to try and work with influencers, people that are seen by young people as ambassadors. And obviously we have a number of ex-apprentices that are world skills champions or sort of apprenticeship competition champions. And although they might not be seen as the sort of traditional influencers, they're certainly people that young people look up to. And I think working with them to showcase the sector as a fantastic opportunity for a career is something that would really positively impact the sort of views and impressions that companies get.
And given the increasing integration of technologies, including artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and also cloud computing in the security domain, how are apprenticeship programs being adapted to ensure the next generation will be ready for the challenges that lie ahead?
Yes, it's a really interesting point because apprenticeships are essentially employer-led. So there is an employer group that meet maybe every quarter or a couple of times a year. I'm not entirely sure, but they meet and they ultimately come up with the knowledge, skills and behaviours that apprenticeship training providers like us would ultimately deliver the education to the young people. And apprenticeship standards are developed in that way so that they are future-proofed. They are made and developed on behalf of the sector, i.e. they meet the needs of employers. And ultimately, apprenticeships are future-proof for that purpose. However, what we do as an independent training provider out with that group is very much work with the partners, the employers and the manufacturers that we have to ensure that not only is the apprenticeship standard that we're meant to be delivered to a high quality standard, but we're always pushing boundaries and making sure that the curriculum is modernised, that the hands-on experience that apprentices are getting is the types of systems and installations and work experience that they'll be getting when they're working with their employers. So we do a lot of cloud-based platforms in our centre now, Eagle Eye, Deep Alert, Imix, and a number of others that we work with, just making sure that when an apprentice is out there on site doing the work for their employer, when a new product's brought on board like a Deep Alert or Eagle Eye, they're not frightened by it, they understand it, and they certainly see the value and efficiencies in working with those types of new technologies. And I guess that's where we also do very well around like bringing in expert partnerships. So obviously I keep talking about the sponsorship initiative, but as part of that initiative, those partners get to come in and meet our apprentices. And the main aspect of that isn't sort of just a selling tool of, oh, look at our product, you should use this and buy it. It's very much a technical teaching element. And because of that, we are future-proofing our curriculum to ensure that those companies that have huge R&D departments are constantly reinvesting in digital technologies and new products. It makes sure that those brand new products are getting directly into the hands of the young people that we teach. And although Skills on Demand, our online on-demand learning platform, is specifically for engineers, project managers, and those that are sort of competent, and it's used as a career pathway upskilling tool, we give that to every single apprentice on our apprenticeship programs for absolutely nothing. So they get that opportunity to upskill themselves way beyond the sort of normal apprenticeship at a very early stage of their career.
What role do employers and training providers, including Skills for Security, actively play in shaping apprenticeships that meet the specific needs of the security and fire industries, David?
What we do really well is obviously, as I mentioned, all of our apprenticeships are sort of employer-led right for the get-go. But what we do more than anybody, or what I'm aware of, is sort of academy-style approaches to apprenticeship. So if you are a large enterprise company, i.e. you pay into the levy and you're likely to take on cohorts of 8 or more apprentices at any one time, then we would specifically deliver to those apprentices a bespoke model. And what that looks like is very much giving the opportunity to an employer to self-develop an apprenticeship so that it meets the needs of not only the sector, but also their company and also their customers. So as part of that, we might use specific products that they use within their business. And we may deliver the curriculum at a different pace so that each apprentice gets an opportunity to move through the program faster or slower, or at different speeds or paces depending on time of year. And we can certainly then front load the education so that if an employer has quite a lot of, for example, installations coming up where they need all apprentices hands on deck being able to do first fixing of a security system, then over that 4-week period, we can front load the education so that each apprentice is basically a ready-made person that can go out and do the first fixing on that installation for them. And as part of that, employers are typically driving their own cultures, code of conduct, mission statement and vision statement through that curriculum as well. And one of our largest partners is Total Integrated Solutions, TIS, based in Mansfield. And they came up with the model of every single time an apprentice gets education from us, which is typically one block every 8 weeks, they get to learn about the culture of the business that they're employed by. They get to learn about the code of conduct, where it's drilled into them from that early stage of an apprenticeship and ultimately derives through the 3-year program into them becoming competent engineers. So they're going a step further than your typical apprenticeship provider and ensuring that they're driving those behaviours, employment behaviours, cultural behaviours from the very first day of employment. And we then, as part of that, we listen to our employers, we take feedback from the learners, and we then ultimately can share that with the trade associations, we can share that with the government, we can share it with a number of bodies, our representatives that fund us, Ofsted, ultimately making sure that the problems that apprentices and employers are having out there in the sector, perhaps around retention, maybe around salaries, national minimum wage problems, national insurance, we are then able to take that information and drive the right behaviours and standards up into government, into trade associations, into those that make the decisions and make things better across the board.
And finally, David, how might the security industry seek to build a culture that not only attracts but then also retains apprentices as long-term career professionals?
So what we've recognised is that, funnily enough, young people stay in a business not because of what they're paid. So we've done quite a lot of research on this, where apprentices can be paid minimum wage, some can be paid very, very well, but that's not what retains them within the business. And what actually retains young people in businesses these days is the constant engagement around incentives, progression, and career development. We actually came up with what we called a retention roadmap, which we don't publicly share, more than happy to. But when an employer's having challenges around retention, we would share that document with the employer. And ultimately what it says is, if an apprentice can complete KPIs A, B, C, D in the first 6 months, then the reward is that they get a tool bag. If they complete KPI E, F, G, by the end of 12 months, they get a works van. If they complete these KPIs at the end of 18 months, then they perhaps get the opportunity to do some commercial training. And we basically shared that document in order for our employers to drive in sort of a culture of incentivizing apprentices, that they're not just doing a 3-year apprenticeship and being forgotten about. If they work towards achieving their goals, then they'll be directly rewarded for them out with their normal salaries, and that's working really, really well, to be honest. And what we're also seeing employers doing, which again sort of recommended by us, is that a number of employers were saying to us that, oh, we spend all this money on the 3-year apprenticeship, we have to pay them a wage, we put them on hotels, we pay for them to travel, and at the end of the 3-year apprenticeship, they get offered more money elsewhere and they disappear. So what we're now seeing is that employers are basically progressing those apprentices as soon as they finish their apprenticeship. So they are making them team leaders or supervisors, and they're allowing them to basically mentor or manage the future apprentices that are coming into the business. They're giving them those sort of first line management responsibilities. They're getting them to manage small, medium-sized projects on behalf of the business, and then they're enrolling them on another apprenticeship in leadership or management at level 3 to 5. And ultimately, what that then does is retain them in the business for another 15 months minimum to potentially 3 years. And it's been a huge tool for our companies to retain their apprentices once they finish the fire and security. Obviously, there's a little bit of commitment from the engineer themselves and the company to put in a little bit more learning every single week. However, the end goal is that you then get a highly skilled, multi-skilled engineer that's also trained in sort of supervisory, line management, project management skills. And it's working really, really well. It's building loyalty with our workforce, it's enhancing workplace culture, and it's very much recognising achievements. And we're seeing huge successes with it.
Returning to the news now, and the Association of University Chief Security Officers, the leading organisation for security professionals operating in the higher and further education sectors around the world, has announced its new chair and vice chair who take up their positions from April this year. Current Vice Chair Jeff Brown, Head of Community Safety and Campus Security at the University of Leeds, will become the chair of AUCSO and replace his current chair Oliver Curran, who is about to step down after serving in this role for 2 years. After retiring from the police service, Brown worked in Iraq as a security consultant for oil company Heritage Energy Middle East, duly tasked with managing the logistics of local, national and expat employees in search of new oil deposits. Brown has served as an AUCSO Executive Board member since 2017 and in the role of Vice Chair since 2023. AUCSO member Gary Stephen, Head of Security and Logistics at the University of Glasgow, will take over from Brown as Vice Chair. After 16 years' service in law enforcement, Stephen changed career paths and moved into the security sector as a security-cleared security manager, securing the Whitehall estate. He then returned to Scotland, where he worked as a senior operations manager for Mighty and also for the HFD Group, the commercial property company, as security and operations manager. Stephen held the role of AUCSO's regional chair for Scotland from 2022 until last year and is now chair of the special interest group for Contest. Speaking about his appointment as chair of AUCSO, Jeff Brown said, "I'm excited and honoured to step into the role of chair of AUCSO. Having worked across various sectors of the security industry, I can confidently state that the higher education sector is both the most challenging and the most rewarding. I'm deeply committed to collaborating closely with our dedicated security professionals and incredible external partners in order to continue driving excellence in this vital field." In assuming the role of Vice Chair, Gary Stevens stated, "I'm delighted and proud to have been appointed Vice Chair of AUCSO. With a deep passion for delivering customer-centric services that enhance the student experience, I am very much committed to supporting my colleagues in achieving the same end goal. I hope to bring both experience and vision to this role." Further, Stephen explained, "I look forward to working closely with Jeff in helping to realise his own goals as Chair, while also striving to showcase best practice in the higher education security domain and strengthening AUCSO's profile within the broader security industry." Concluding our news review, the International Optical Technologies Association, formerly known as the International Hologram Manufacturers Association, has been established to represent and promote the wide range of authentication, anti-counterfeiting and automation optical security technologies available to global law enforcement agencies, central governments and brand owners alike. The rebranding move comes as holography, once the cornerstone of anti-counterfeiting solutions, has evolved and now features within a broader spectrum of optical security technologies. On that note, technologies continue to to advance beyond holography, and in the face of expanding market applications, security sector mergers and acquisitions, and consolidation among solutions providers themselves. The increased demand for physical solutions is also being felt, with customers and end users requiring sustainable solutions, while the challenges themselves grow ever more intricate. Association membership currently embraces all developers and suppliers of security features based on technologies that, in addition to holography, include micro-lens arrays, micro-mirrors, plasmonics, nano-gratings, color change, caustics, polarization, photonic crystals, special print-generated effects, or a combination of the above. Indeed, several existing members produce optical security features beyond holography, such as Spark Orbital by De La Rue. As the trade association stands on the cusp of a transformative era, the transition to the new branding reflects a commitment to ongoing evolving markets and the opening up of new technology frontiers, particularly so in terms of optical security itself. Association Chair Dr. Mark Deeks stated, "I am honoured to be part of this transformative moment, building on our legacy while also embracing a modern identity. Change is never easy, but it's essential for growth. This is more than a rebrand, though. It's a movement to lead the optical security industry into a brighter and more innovative future. We want industry stakeholders to join us." Deeks went on to conclude, "We will spearhead a new era of authentication, anti-counterfeiting and automation, while always pushing the boundaries of possibility. We'll also continue to evolve in line with the exciting technologies we represent in order to ensure the interests of members and manufacturers are very much to the fore and that their voices are always heard." Our second guest on this edition of the podcast is Christian Haver, Chief Technology Officer at Logpoint, the dedicated European provider of a converged cybersecurity platform that empowers organizations to thrive by delivering threat detection and instant response solutions. Based in Copenhagen, Christian joined the team at Logpoint in early 2016, having previously served as a consultant with Devoteam Consulting. Before taking up his present role with the business, Christian spent time as Vice President for Solutions and Integrations and then Chief Product Officer. At present, he oversees security and threat-focused research. Christian serves as a guest lecturer on cybersecurity at leading Danish universities and holds a Bachelor of IT degree from the IT University of Copenhagen. On episode 33 of the Security Matters podcast, Christian examines the Security Operations Centre environment and the impact being exerted within due to the advent of artificial intelligence. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the podcast, Christian. When it comes to the Security Operations Centre environment, what's the potential scale of the problem in terms of operator alertness fatigue?
Well, Brian, thanks for having me. One of the things that we're seeing in security operations centers is that organizations are maturing their infrastructure and they're getting great technologies in place, EDR, NDR, XDR, a lot of those cloud workloads solutions. They all contribute additional telemetry, additional events, additional detections that you as an analyst will have to deal with. We're seeing primarily driven out of the US, or at least the US were a forerunner on zero trust. And when we see zero trust successfully implemented, you will have a lot more signals, a lot more detections that you will have to deal with as an analyst. So I think we've talked about alert fatigue in the SOC for a while. And one of the things that we would typically say in the past is, you would aggregate into the SIM all of these different events and you will surface detections from the SIM. But now you have all of these different technologies and every one of them is generating detections. And that's putting pressure on the SOC teams, because where is that natural aggregation point? It's no longer in the SIM, it's somewhere else. And we're seeing teams scrambling a bit. And the way that manifests is that previous generations of maybe more or less hard-coded playbooks, if this, then that type scenarios, it ceases to be as effective as it has historically been. So in a way, the world is moving fast around security at this moment, and I think innovation on both how the SOC teams think about alert fatigue, thinks about the fire hose that they have to be drinking from, is more important than it has been for a long period of time.
What sort of impact can be exerted on members of the security personnel in relation to their mental health?
Studies done on rescue dogs in avalanche, earthquake scenarios show that they stop being effective finding survivors if they don't see successes. And what scientists were able to do, it's easier to measure the brain of an animal than it is on a human in stressful scenarios, ethics and all. We're seeing that the stress response that's activated every time you're put into a scenario is severe. So that continuous activation of stress hormones on the brain every time you see a detection or an incident or a case being generated for you to look at, and then constantly seeing, no, this was actually a false positive. Oh, this was not as bad as it would. Conditions the brain, and you wear out the receptors in the brain. You can actually measure that burnout, and of course this is a big headache for SOC teams. It's difficult to find people. It's difficult to keep them in the positions. But also it leads to missing detections, right? You at a certain point, if you've dealt with 100 detections during a day, at the end of the day, when 101 rolls around, you might not have the same response in your brain that you would typically rely on. It is severe, both on how enjoyable it is to work in that role, but secondly also in how effective these security operations centers effectively are in these scenarios.
And do you believe that generative artificial intelligence could be employed to alleviate the issues you've mentioned here?
The short answer is, of course. And the longer answer is that the industry needs to get its act together. There is a lot of AI washing, a lot of people slapping AI on top of their existing solutions and claiming it's great without necessarily having the data or the evidence to back up why and how that works. So what I'll offer here is maybe our take on a way where generative AI can help. Generative AI, in particular, the type that we see with ChatGPT and otherwise, is exceptionally good at clustering text together and then measuring the distance from one text cluster to the next. You can use that in a detection context. How much similar is what I'm looking at to what a threat report or a large threat intelligence research piece describes? Can I understand what it is I'm looking at? Can I understand what would be the appropriate next step in that detection? So I think a generative AI should be used not as a chatbot when you have a question. I think that's fine, right? It's a gimmicky capability, but I would say where the industry needs to focus is to solve those problems that analysts spend 8 hours a day working on, exactly to address that mental health situation, but also just to improve how well these teams perform.
How might the deployment of artificial intelligence and hypergraphs reduce the volume of alerts, do you think?
This is something that's close to my heart, and we're seeing an emergence in the industry of experts beginning to talk more and more about combining graphs in the mathematical term, the graph theory, and hypergraphs and generative AI. So the concept, a quick fly into the concept is that instead of evaluating every single detection, which would be akin to evaluating every single pixel on a screen independently and then being able to make out what that picture is on a 4K screen, it's an uphill battle and it's a losing battle. The idea with hypergraphs is to say, okay, let's automatically bring together different detections, link them up where they can be linked, and that's on any observable or attribute that's available in that graph. Correlate the graph with other contextual data. That could be threat intelligence, what you know about the asset, what you know about the endpoint and the identity, and say, okay, I see 3 steps of a known attack, and then maybe an hour or 2 later, something completely unrelated shows up in a different incident, but it's related to the same threat actor, so we can automatically correlate that together. It's essentially see it as a simple approach to automatically correlating, and then adding in AI on top of it can say, okay, this graph evaluated on like similar graphs or previous graphs allows the analyst to say, okay, how was this chain of events. The chain of detections dealt with previously. What can I learn from it? So it solves a lot of those problems that are plaguing the SOC today. And the good thing is it doesn't necessarily require very advanced technologies to get going. There's tons of open source technologies out there that can do that.
Do you envisage a future wherein the available technology will play a far more active role in both investigations and incident response?
If we look beyond the 12 to 36 months planning horizon, that's incredibly difficult, right? And as the industry is really moving faster than it has for a long time. One of the things we're seeing is that the AI models are moving from being classical generative in nature, saying, okay, with this input, this is the output. And there is a move towards agents. And AI agents will say, okay, this is the investigation that I have in front of me. These are the API endpoints available in the infrastructure for either isolation or investigation, or containment, response maybe even. And say, okay, based on what I have, based on what I know, based on what's available, this is what I want to do. And we're seeing a lot of research in that area. We're doing some as well in our labs environment, but we're seeing a lot of research in the area of saying, based on what I know, based on what I've seen, based on what's available, how can we make the life of the analyst easier? So that will help in both the investigation and the response. Where we as an industry will have to spend a little bit of time is maybe figuring out, is this something we want to fully automate? There are still a lot of us old timers around that will say, this is great, don't automate it, but if you can auto create the API response and document and present to the analyst, you should do X, Y, and Z without having those hard-coded playbooks we talked about at the beginning. That will be a significant lift. But at the end of the day, it's about taking those activities that you spend 8 hours a day working on and applying those technologies there. And the more we do that, we continuously find those new areas where analysts will spend a lot of time. I'm seeing this as a really interesting part of the cybersecurity domain, both in terms of academic and scientific research, but also product innovation. So for sure, this is where technology will play an active role in the future.
And finally, Christian, what's the immediate roadmap for Logpoint as a company?
We just came out of a company-wide kickoff where we announced the strategy for the next 18 months, both on product, go-to-market, and for the company as a whole. We're focusing hard on detection. We see that there are many producers of detections out there. We have a little skunkworks team that has worked in stealth mode, building out some of these hypergraph and AI activities. And we're now beginning to package and bundle these capabilities together, going to market with that. Specifically, we're seeing a trend in Europe where a lot of the mid-market buyers are looking to buy from managed security providers. So the other thing that's in the near-term roadmap for us is not only making it easier for the SOC teams, but making it easier for the managed security providers to go out and say, look, I'm your trusted partner, dear end customer. Let's go on this maturity improvement journey together, but also in a way where I can have confidence. So the MSSP will be able to say, this is what I do, this is how I detect, this is how I respond, this is the value you get. Both when there is an incident, but also how we use that data when there's not an incident to improve the maturity of that end customer's environment.
That brings us to the end of this edition of the Security Matters podcast. Many thanks indeed to David Scott from Skills for Security and also Christian Haver of Logpoint for their time and insight. Many thanks also to our podcast sponsor, the Security Event. The Security Event runs from the 8th to the 10th of April 2025 at the NEC in Birmingham. To register for the show, visit www.thesecurityevent.co.uk. Don't forget to visit our website at www.securitymattersmagazine.com, where you can access all of our podcasts and also read the latest news and opinion from the security business sector. You can view our dedicated features content and also sign up to receive our very popular weekly e-news bulletin. Please do contact us if there are any key themes or issues you would like us to explore on upcoming editions of the podcast. You can do so on X, formerly Twitter of course, by using the hashtag SecurityPod. On that note, make sure you follow us on X at WBMSecMatters and access our LinkedIn page at Security Matters Magazine and website. Please do like and share the podcast content and spread the word among your industry colleagues. You can listen to the Security Matters podcast for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or Podbean. To download the Security Matters podcast, all you need to do is enter the term Security Matters into your chosen platform's search box. We'll see you next time.